Across our state and throughout much of the nation, a greater number of students than ever before are struggling. For years, we have attempted to understand the root causes of lower success rates and an increasing number of dropouts.
Kids who have been traumatized have always been in the school system, but they get labeled as behavior problems usually, or they get relegated to special education classes, and teachers don't have any kind of training for them to recognize that a child's been traumatized.
Modifications to curriculum and instructional strategy seem to have had little effect overall, but there are signs of hope. Teachers and administrators are increasingly turning to compassionate school and classroom strategies to improve the social and emotional well-being of students, strengthening families and communities.
We're seeing there are decreases in acting out behaviors in school. We're seeing kids increase their attendance in school. We're seeing just a general more positive climate and feel. And I think we're seeing educators finding a new sense of hope.
That hope is founded in a new written work entitled The Heart of Learning and Teaching: Compassion, Resiliency, and Academic Success. Every day, millions of children arrive at public schools throughout the country. There are more than 1 million in Washington state alone. They come from different backgrounds, cultures, and family situations, and they each have their own unique personal struggles. Schools must overcome these challenges to meet educational standards.
My first 2 years here at Manitou Park was filled with a lot of violence and tragedy. We were also seeing a lot of children in poverty and coming to us with a lot of traumatic experiences.
I've been at Manitou about 7 or 8 years, and I have really seen things changed even just at this school, with not only different curriculum, but with the different behaviors that we have had with the students that I've worked with.
Schools are beginning to discover that academic success is dependent on many factors, inside and outside of the classroom.
We were seeing kids that were dropping out of school, kids that were not getting engaged in school or staying engaged in school, and it wasn't all about academics. It was about how they were functioning in their daily lives that determined whether or not they were going to academically achieve.
Trauma and adversity can affect any child, regardless of age, economic class, or the community in which they live.
Where trauma comes from isn't always something horrific. It can be everyday things. And what's traumatic to one person is not the same for someone else. We all have different levels for how we take things in.
It's hard to play chess in a hurricane. And to expect kids to calculate math when they're calculating where they're going to sleep tonight, to ask kids to have perfect penmanship when their life is a mess, to ask kids to read a story when they can't even find words to describe the story of what's going on in their own lives, it's not reasonable.
Many teachers have devised ways to deal with students' personal adversity and trauma, but very few written resources have been developed.
We wanted to offer something to the field that was one more piece of literature that could hopefully be thought-provoking and challenge schools to think about bringing that heart back into the work that they're doing, that caring back into the work that they're doing.
The book is called The Heart of Learning and Teaching. And we came to that title because we really feel that you cannot teach the mind until you reach the heart.
The book, The Heart of Learning and Teaching, represents years of study and extensive interviews with researchers, scientists, teachers, and administrators in the field, as well as students and their families. Its 6 concise chapters focus on the relationship between trauma and learning, taking care of ourselves while tending to the needs of others, compassionate school and classroom strategies, and forming partnerships with schools, families, and the community that support vulnerable students. It also contains real-life examples from the field, as well as an introduction to other resources on the subject. The book underscores the importance of positive interactions between educators and their students.
What we tried to do in the structuring of this is to acknowledge that relationship. When you boil it all down, relationship also matters in education. Great curriculum helps, instruction helps, highly qualified teachers are fabulous, but relationship and compassion in these relationships is as important, if not, heaven forbid, we see that it be more important to kids' success.
Schools are just one part of the equation. Students need a support structure that includes their families and communities, as well as their school.
When Eli first came to us, he came from a school where he had been expelled. And the father came in and met with me. And the one thing that Dad said to me that I'll never forget, he said to me, "How do you throw away a child when he's 6 years old?" My response back was, "We're going to do everything we can to make sure he's successful here." Eli came to school then, and for the first couple of months, he just really had a hard time.
Having fits and stuff like that where he would just get mad because he didn't know anything else. All of us at home and at school and stuff really had to come around him and say, okay, we understand that this is the problem and we would like to get back on track.
Eli became a really important kid to us because we wanted to make sure he was a success.
What's been exciting for us is the behavior and everything from last year compared to this year is completely different.
This year, he has friends, he's learning, he's reading.
I think that's really is a positive thing, that school is not negative. It's also for building good relationships with kids and with people and families. And it's definitely, that we care about Eli, not just a student. We care about Eli.
If we hadn't have been a team and hadn't have worked together and hadn't have filled in whenever we needed to do that, I'm not sure he would have made it.
Supporting students through empathy and empowerment is a critical part of compassionate learning strategy. But teachers themselves need support as well.
After the murders and the different tragedies that happened here in the lockdowns, I didn't know how to help myself and help the staff. So what this training did was let us put ourselves as a priority and take care of ourselves.
We really believe that it's an ethical obligation of educators to make time and energy to practice being well so that when they enter the school, they can be fully prepared and equipped to engage with kids.
It gives me a different outlook. And sometimes I kind of laugh about it. And if I can see some humor in the situation, it releases tension for me. But it also, I think, releases the tension for the children.
Compassionate school strategies have provided a stable, safe, and supportive environment where learning can take place.
The kids know what to do. I don't have to explain anything. They know what my expectations are. They feel safe to take risks. I have, some kids that have a really hard time, but they still want to participate. They still want to try because they know this is a safe place so they can raise their hand, and even if they're wrong, we're going to work together to get to the right answer.
Perfect.
Teachers can employ many different strategies to establish a supportive culture inside the school. This can mean addressing the connections between body and mind.
Lips, suck in your stomach. Perfect.
Yoga class, it calms me down. It helps me during math. I do something from yoga and it relaxes me.
I noticed the kids, they like the deep breathing, they like the moves. And kids who come from trauma, when you get them up into using their whole brains, it's a wonderful thing.
Students can also express themselves and release tension through reading, creative writing, and art. In a compassionate learning framework, teachers are encouraged to use creative strategies to help foster overall well-being among students, often leading to academic and personal success. Compassionate strategies don't just benefit students and teachers. Their reach and positive effect extend to families and entire communities.
If children start thriving and families get things that they need and stresses are removed and people are educated, the whole community thrives because the people in it are thriving.
We're not going to fix the trauma in our society, but there's something to be said for being compassionate in our dealings. What parent doesn't want a compassionate teacher?
Eventually, the intrinsic rewards of doing it because it's the right thing to do and it helps them feel better takes place. And I just say that success breeds more success.
Like their many students, each school is different. Yet they all have the ability to provide an environment where the main focus is the well-being of each student.
When you walk into a compassionate school, you feel a welcoming sense of being there. There are adults when that child enters school who are there to say hello, who are there to make a connection.
I think the Compassionate Schools movement has kind of made teaching fun in a way that it hasn't been before. Once they can put their finger on a situation with a student and say, I now understand what's going on in the life of that student, it takes the weight off that student, it takes the weight off that teacher, and suddenly now you have a communication between two people that before didn't exist.
Compassionate strategies represent an opportunity to enhance the role of schools. They bring students, teachers, administrators, and families together in a safe, supportive environment. And they show that the heart of learning and teaching is compassion, resiliency, and academic success.